All right. We're live with none other than Binary Fate to discuss the binary fate of Monero. Uh, Real name Jeremie. I don't want to butcher the last name. I'll let you introduce yourself, Jeremie. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't think I need to say my last name because it's fairly easy to Google me already. I don't need to add more to that.
Oh,
Um,
okay. We'll change the title of the
I don't
video.
worry. I can say it. So my name is Jeremie Dubois-Lacoste in French, or Dubois-Lacoste, as you would say it, as an English speaker. And yeah, binary fate, mostly online and in the crypto space.
So you're part of the core Monero team. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
What have you done to actually contribute to Monero itself? I know you were I guess part of the very early days of Monero, right?
Yes, yeah. I think I don't remember the date exactly, but I found Monero in its second or third week on Bitcoin Talk because at the time that's where the only discussion was taking place on Bitcoin Talk forum, and I was looking for coins that were CPU only mineable, and there was this bunch of new crypto node forks that were perfect if you wanted to CPU mine because there was no GPU miner at the time and there was no ASIC. And most of them, if not all of them, except for Monero, were just scammy copycats of Bitcoin, which was the original scam coin. But the technology was great, and then I stumbled upon Monero, and I immediately saw that it was fairly different, radically different from all the other forks, in that the community was like totally different and it was real. Everything else was fake. So obviously it was easy to spot that something was really different there. And also it has been fairly launched. So that was shortly after the original core team actually took over by a sort of coup and forked the project from the original person that launched it, which was thankful for today. Um, so they were starting to drive the things, and there was around that very, very high quality community. And I decided to get involved in the discussions and became passionate fairly quickly. I was anywhere in crypto and in Bitcoin since 2 years back then. So I knew enough to recognize that something had potential, and so I started by just taking part in discussions, and then I happened to launch some business, and we decided to bet on Monero, XMR2, which came afterwards, and so on.
You're
But
you're, you're
so
basically the Elon Musk of Monero, the entrepreneur of Monero. So you essentially launched, I guess, the kind of the first, right, the first application that utilized Monero. Is that fair to say? Like XMR dot TO.
mm, I think I don't want to be rude to anyone else, so I'm really checking, but I think it was the first like real business that was clearly Monero oriented. Yeah, I believe so.
So so you kind of stumbled upon Monero. Were you already so you were coming from the Bitcoin community? Why were you looking for other projects? Were you already kind of disillusioned with Bitcoin at that time, and that how were you already kind of frustrated by its non-private or non-fungible nature, or did that come later?
That came later. Um, and that's why I can forgive every maximalist nowadays because in a way I've been there before the term maximalist was actually coined. Um, so I can sympathize with that sentiment. Yeah, I was in Bitcoin since a couple of years. I became very quickly very passionate with Bitcoin, like a lot of people, you just dig through the rabbit hole, and um, it did change my life fairly quickly, and you can see where I am today. My life is totally different than what it was before. and that's thanks to Monero nowadays. But originally, it was also thanks to Bitcoin. So I was deep in crypto at the time already, and maybe not really aware of the Bitcoin deficiencies or not aware of their importance. I think technically speaking, I was very much on top of the fact that fungibility or the lack of fungibility was a big deal. Especially because I was running a Bitcoin casino at the time, and the fact that customers could have their Bitcoin linked when they were selling them to Coinbase, for instance, back to the history that was coming to from a gambling platform. It was in practice a big issue, but there was simply no alternative. So it was a pity in a way that we got Bitcoin introduced to the world without the privacy that would go along ideally, but also it was very hard to question how to do better because it didn't exist. And then the crypto note introduction was really a big deal because a lot of people didn't see that coming. Before that, we had no idea it was even possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit too. So what did you do in Bitcoin? You started the gambling. What was the gambling site there called?
That was called Lucky Bit. Everything in Bitcoin is bit something,
Yeah.
especially at the time.
And is that still around? That's not around anymore, right? No.
I think the page might still be online, but it's barely functional for technical reasons. We just leave it online so the brand, keeps being alive, because we're actually developing a new, completely different version that would rely on the same branding. So
Okay.
yeah, you can see the page, but I would not advise to play because it's not going to be very fun. It might take 10 minutes to show up or whatever.
And was that before Satoshi Dice, or is that like around the same time?
That was just after. So it was a similar principle as Satoshi Dice, which is an on-chain, probably fair game. So you send a transaction in order to bet, and later on you can verify that the casino didn't cheat and that the results is proper. But Satoshi Dice is totally abstract in the sense that you send a bet from your wallet and you receive your winnings, and that's it. There is nothing happening. There is nothing to see.
Mm-hmm.
There is no fun in a way, except that you wait for the result. And what we did was to add something that was actually happening in order to show the result of the bet. And that was fairly similar to Minko, so we can discuss that later. But that basically killed Satoshi Dice because everyone suddenly realized that it was simply more fun. If you go to a casino, if you can see what's going on around you, it's more fun than if you are blindfolded. So Satoshi Dice was the first. It was the largest one at the time, and then basically we took that market, and in 2014 we had, I believe on average 5% of the Bitcoin transactions worldwide that were to or from that service.
Oh wow! Wait, what was the percent?
5%.
Oh wow!
So yeah, if you look at the list of Bitcoin addresses with the most transactions ever, the first two are Satoshi Dice, and the third one is Lucky Bit. And I don't think it will be ever beaten by anyone, simply because the on-chain principles on Bitcoin is not very workable anymore.
That's incredible. I think that we're seeing that now with Monero with Minko, right? I mean, the transaction volume has recently skyrocketed.
It did, and weirdly at the same time as we launched Minko. I don't want to give specific numbers, but yeah, that's to a big part. That's just players enjoying what they can do with their Monero at the moment.
Yeah, it's a great use case. So why did it take so long to launch something like Minko for Monero? Why didn't that happen earlier? Obviously, Monero, I think being a more ideal fit for something like this. Is it just it wasn't ready?
To some extent, yes. I would not label things are ready or not, but you have to ponder whether a business will be successful, what are the technical constraints, and so on. And I think it would have incurred too much cost in terms of scalability before bulletproof. So before bulletproof, the average transactions would have been about, if I remember well, like 13 or 14 kilobytes with simply just two outputs. And when you play Minko, you can just send one output per bet instead of one transaction per bet. So you save on your transaction. So it would be even larger. And nowadays we are down to 2 kilobytes. So that's quite a big deal also in terms of verification time. And you can see that by all the comments of people that are saying that despite the spike in number of transactions, there are absolutely no issue running their nodes, even on a fairly old and crappy hardware.
And you think that's because of the architecture of Monero? Is it have anything to do with the dynamic block size as well, or it's really just with bulletproofs things are more efficient these days?
The verification time is faster with bulletproof. I think we could still run the same service effectively pre-bulletproof, but the cost on the blockchain size would be much larger. So it's also a cost that would be incurred by everyone else in the future. And I doubt that it would be as attractive to anyone nowadays to have this sort of activity if the future cost would be that of the pre-bulletproof era. And then, bulletproof improved the verification time a bit. And we're not even close to using the dynamic block size yet, despite the spikes.
Have we seen dynamic block size in action yet? Has it come into play?
Not that I recall, except in 2014 because of the famous attack, most likely from someone of the Bitcoin universe. And basically, so the attack was, in order to perform the attack, they needed to have a block that was larger than, that they needed a specific number of transactions in a block. And in order to attain that number of transactions, they needed to spike the block size a bit. So they had to use this mechanism by spamming the blockchain for a while in order then to, by the protocol rules, have the right to use a larger block in order to find the right number of transactions so that they could use their exploit. And since then, I don't believe that we've seen it. I don't think so. Certainly not on in a continuous way.
Are you kind of do you think dynamic block size is something, a big attribute of Monero? Is it going to come into play? Is it an important part of its architecture? Do you have an opinion there? Is that something that attracted to Monero as well?
I think it's absolutely. I think it's beautiful because to a lot of people, the attraction to Bitcoin, and especially I think for computer scientists, is that you put in a protocol what was before that decided on a regular basis by humans, and you remove the need to have humans putting their hands in all these regular decisions. You just function by a set of rules, and you can see that Bitcoin is, for instance, adapting the difficulty for the proof of work mining algorithm every 2 weeks on average. It's defined by the number of blocks, but every 2 weeks, you basically, by the Bitcoin protocol, look at how quickly you mined that number of blocks. And if it was shorter than 2 weeks, then you increase the difficulty and vice versa. And this is beautiful because otherwise you would have to have humans every 2 weeks coming together and deciding, okay, guys, what's the next difficulty now? So Bitcoin went, some way in that direction, and in a way that is already quite fascinating. But there are still a lot of hard-coded decisions that, when they turn out not to be ideal, which is probably the case with the Bitcoin block size, then you need people to come together in order to update the rules that was hard-coded. And the issue, of course, with Bitcoin is that nobody could, agree and decide what was the best direction moving forward. And I believe it's simply because there is no good direction. There are only less bad alternatives, because it's a complex system. And if you get some gain in one domain, then you incur some cost in another. So you penalize scalability if you want larger blocks and so on. So it's only really discussing bad solutions, and you're trying to find the best or the less bad solution. And humans are very they tend to suck at that. It's like having shitty political debates. It's just going nowhere. So by having this as much as possible to be embedded into the protocol as an algorithmic rules, I think makes Monero extremely powerful. Now, I don't want to be totally naive, and if you look at all the recent art forks, fairly often we actually adapt the rules for updating the block size. We did recently in order to avoid the so-called Big Bang attack. We did also before with the bulletproof, because the transaction size is changing and so on. So we're not quite there yet, but I really like the intent.
Mm-hmm. How about the tail emission? What's your take on that? Do you think that's something that's another very positive attribute of Monero and a necessary part of the architecture?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think it's necessarily positive because it will be a positive. I think it's positive because it is different from Bitcoin, and because we have no idea how it will eventually turn out. What's this market gonna look like in few decades when the Bitcoin block reward is falling to zero? Nobody knows. And I think having alternatives in general is good. And yes, I also tend to like the specific alternative that Monero is using. I think it makes sense. And I dislike the blind trust that a lot of people are putting in the lack of telemission of Bitcoin. I think it's akin to sending people to Mars with a booster for the return that would use a completely new type of engine that nobody ever bothered testing on planet Earth. That would be like nonsense decision. It would be like, well, maybe we can include several engines. Maybe if there is really no way to test it before, we can think of alternatives. But this is not happening. A lot of people are just like building an entire ecosystem on this very fuzzy, vague promise that is gonna pan out okay at the end. And I think if I had to intuitively judge which of the alternative between the Bitcoin type of just relying on the fee market and the tail emission of Monero, I think Monero is in a much more secure bucket, at least.
So when did you, I know we talked about this a little bit, so you transitioned from Bitcoin to Monero, but when did you really become, I don't know if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but disillusioned with Bitcoin?
I think that was a continuous process, and I would not say I'm disillusioned. I'm a bit disillusioned by how people in the space tend to think about it, or what's the narrative that is being used, or to see educated people that are having very, very simple and shortcut opinions from my perspective. That makes me a bit disillusioned. But the technology by itself, I think it provides, it's a wonderful Trojan horse for regulators, because a few years back they were all screaming criminal money and so on, but in the end, once they were properly educated, they liked the transparency a lot. I think it was a good first mover. I wish it was not promoted to people that are in oppressive countries, for instance, because yes, sure, you have the protection over the fact that we can seize your assets, but in terms of physical safety and personal freedom, I think it's a dystopian wet dream. And yeah, I'm really worried of how it's being pushed, in countries where people might actually put themselves in danger using it.
Mm-hmm. So is the fate of Monero binary? Is it all or nothing? Is it if it works, we succeed, we go to the moon, and if it doesn't, it fails, it goes to zero?
I think you would have to define moon, because 5 years ago I would have been amazed if someone had told me what Monero is today. Um, I'm not even talking about the price, but just like the community that is around it, the ecosystem, the recognition. This is moon
So
for all means. So
have we flipped that binary switch then? Are we, so it works? It's
I
a
think
go?
we flipped the switch of 5 years ago. Now I would not define moon in the same way nowadays. So I think we are never there. And realistically, we won't. I don't think that crypto in general is gonna be embraced by everyone in the world, or that there is any mass adoption coming in the next few years. I don't see that happening. And with Monero, neither. But it's a very, very important tool, and I think it's. I don't know if we are here to stay, because you never know. We might have a crazy bug or whatever. But in terms of everything else, the community, the principles, what we try to achieve, I think we already provided a lot, and I don't see that disappearing away.
How about the adage that if Bitcoin fails, they all fail, including Monero? I mean,
No,
are you a believer in that?
No, I think that's a trader statement. What they mean by that is, of course, everything would crash, but long term, I don't buy the argument that it would kill the space.
Okay.
The idea would be intact, and everything that can implement that idea would still be around.
I agree with you. I think even Fluffy agrees with the sentiment that if Bitcoin fails, they all fail, though. And I don't think I think his argument is then the faith in these digital assets themselves would fail. There'd be no way to kind of create digital gold. I mean, but it's kind of the ultimate argument, right? Because then nobody could ever argue against Bitcoin and essentially beat Bitcoin if that's the argument.
Yeah, and also I think it's a bit, it's too narrow of a view, because it's considering that everyone is fairly uneducated, and they're like, oh, there was a bug, it means we can never do it. And no, that's not the case. Originally, when Bitcoin appeared, the only people that were like fascinated or interested by it were computer scientists, or developers, and simply because they could see that in theory it was actually working, and then in practice it was also working. That was beautiful. And if there was a catastrophic bug, everyone could know that the cause of Bitcoin failing was just that bug, and thinking that they would totally forget that and then just think we can't do it at all. I think it's maybe the mass media would we could see that type of headline, but there would also be a lot of people, especially those that were interested by Bitcoin in the first place, by crypto in the first place. They would still be around, because they would know the real cause and why it was first a success and then a failure, and what can we fix afterward.
Yeah, I don't think you take the genie out of the bottle. The genie's out of the bottle. I don't think you put it back in at this point.
Yep.
People would continue to push
I'm
forward.
listening. Just grabbing a second coffee. Sorry.
Okay, go for it. Yeah, I agree with you there. So one of the major questions in Monero. So I see kind of two big questions. We touched on one already. One, I think, is the scaling. Can Monero scale? Obviously, we have things like dynamic block size that helps the chain itself scale, but kind of the weight of Monero, it's kind of very intensive. So can it scale? And then the second big question that's always asked about Monero is this concept of perfectly binding and perfectly blinding. Is that an issue for Monero? So to explain to the viewers, that Monero, because it is perfectly blinding, it can't also be perfectly binding. So the chain can't be audited in a way where everybody knows, that there's only so many coins, and coins aren't kind of secretly being printed, essentially, because of its perfectly blinding nature. Do you see that as a legitimate criticism and something that Monero will need to overcome? Will that just take time as we, trust that Monero actually is perfectly binding? We kind of earn that trust over time and seeing that it is working. How do you see that playing out?
So first, I think that things are not as binary as they are sometimes presented. So I don't think that you can say, for instance, that you can't audit the Monero supply while you can audit the Bitcoin one. It's simply that if you want to do that for Bitcoin, you have to rely on additions, right? Like the mathematical operation addition, and you just sum up all the block reward, and then you're happy, because unless there is a bug in the implementation of your mathematical addition, then that means it's your outstanding supply. And in Monero, it's just the same thing, except that it's not an addition. The math behind is a bit more complex, but it's just the same thing, So there is no black and white in there. It's just a level of complexity for the mathematics and the implementation that make some people uncomfortable, while they seem to be okay with the addition, and I can give them that. So I think it's not. I don't see it as a criticism. It's just what it is. And then if you are not okay with taking that risk, but when you use a certain system, then don't use it. That's as simple as that. Of course, we, as a community and as Monero developers, we should try to do our best so that it's as solid as possible and we can audit everything, both the theory and the code. But in the end, if people are not comfortable with that sort of underlying mechanism, then there's nothing we can do except moving to a different kind of mechanism to provide the privacy that we're currently getting from ring signatures, for instance. And it's very possible that we move to something else in the future. It's just that I think right now there is no better alternative that would provide everything we need in Monero in a way that is acceptable by the project standards. So I mean, for instance, without a trusted setup, there is nothing right now that would cut it, but hopefully that will come. And I think the strength of Monero is also that we are able to update the software, update the protocol, come together and actually agree. We're all mostly on the same page on where we want to go, and then how we actually get there is open to discussion. But if there are better tools that become available, then I'm fairly confident that there will be consensus to move to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always kind of see that as a definitely an advantage that Monero has versus things like Bitcoin. We seem to be, as a community, open to evolving, and we've proven that we do it. So do you see the perfectly binding versus being perfectly blinding thing holding us back at all? Is that are there people kind of not trusting Monero at this stage? Do you see that as being an issue?
No, in practice, no. On Twitter, a little bit, and but I think it's only in very small circles that people are actually worried about that. It also means that you have to be worried about storage of wealth. But if you just use Monero as a privacy tool, sporadically, then you should not really care about that. So yeah, I think I see that criticism for people that are maybe more vocal or more public than the average cryptocurrency user. But I don't see that as something that is hindering adoption of Monero at all.
Mm-hmm. So do you see Monero being a storage of wealth then? I mean, I personally look at it as a better form of digital gold than Bitcoin because of its fungible attributes. Obviously, Bitcoin's claim to fame is that it's capped at 21 million. But we talked about, for all the reasons we talked about, with the tail emission actually may be serving a purpose in that it actually secures this digital gold. But do you look at Monero as potentially playing that role too, as being a store of value, as kind of acting as a digital gold, not just a way of transferring, anonymously?
Yeah, totally. I don't oppose the tool. Like I see too many people on forums and discussions that are opposing these two concepts of day-to-day currency versus store value. And I think if we can achieve both, it's great, and that's ideally what you would like from a currency, right? So yeah, if we can have a currency that we can use day by day, and that also offers something akin to gold nowadays, but in the digital realm, that's great. And I think yeah, so far Monero is ticking all the boxes.
So, I mean, you and I obviously agree on these things. Monero's digital gold, Monero's digital cash. Um, any which way you look at it, that seems to be the case. So, where's the disconnect here? Why is Monero sitting at whatever it is, 0.01 Bitcoin? Um, I personally don't mind. Gives me more time to kind of accumulate. But what is the disconnect? Is it just it's going to take time for people to realize the importance of fungibility, or is there something else going on? Do you have any opinion there, or is it something you don't even really care about?
Well, I do care a lot about adoption and education. I think they go hand in hand. But to answer your question, just look at CoinMarketCap and everything that is above Monero. How much of that rationally makes sense? How much of that is just vaporware? And a lot of stuff are holding up because they're actually vaporware. So it's super easy to hold up at any crazy price because you don't have anything yet to that can be criticized or that can be broken. So I think in general that the crypto space is a bit depressing if you are keen to see a match between the price of projects or currency and the innovation that is going on behind them. And for Monero in particular, the discrepancy can be a bit depressing sometimes. But I think if you just look at the rest of the space, it just makes sense. It's just that this space is, in a way, is bonkers. That's what it is. I think it's a lot of money grab and people that are mostly in there for the get rich quick greed, and then you can't really expect to get them on board with arguments such as fungibility and rational arguments and so on. I think you and I are sadly probably not as representative of the crypto holders all over the world as we wish for.
So, what gets us there? I mean, everybody talks about this bear market kind of shaking out these speculators. I don't know if it obviously it certainly hasn't achieved that yet. Shaking out these speculators and everybody starting to realize the core values of what cryptocurrency is supposed to be. So I do think there was a little bit of that, and I'm I'm kind of surprised people aren't, or maybe it's that is what's will start to happen now. Start to as they realize that, realize wait a minute, there's Bitcoin and then there's Monero, because as they start to realize what these core features are, what this stuff's all supposed to be about. So we haven't totally seen it yet. You know, with the bear market, do you think it's just going to have to be some kind of events that take place? Like, what's how are people going to start to realize that if your digital currency isn't fungible, it's not a digital currency, it's not digital cash?
I can hear your frustration, by the way, and I think it's good if that gives you energy to provide education. But if it's just um, it should not lead you to bitterness. I speak like in Star Wars, but um, I think it takes a lot of time, and if we constantly expect things to get better or to get close to what we hold important in our personal perspectives, just in the next few months, because that should just make sense. And then when it doesn't, it's a bit of a step back. And I've seen that since many years. And it's just you have to accept that it takes a lot of time. And I think education is getting there. There is a lot of people that were in crypto since a long time that are vocal in Bitcoin, that you can see this. They always make an exception for Monero, except very few of them that are like, yes, I'm going. But these guys or girls, yeah, they get it. The masses in crypto not yet, but I think we need to win them over with education. And not, for instance, with starting discussions by saying you're delusional. I see that too often because anyway, online debates and discussions are rarely as constructive as what you would do in real life. But if it's like if someone just wakes up and you tell them, "Oh, you look grumpy today," it's not the ideal start to win them on your side. So I think it's a matter of explaining them. It's a matter of relating real life occurrences of lack of fungibility. So when something is traced, when someone is wrongly accused of something they didn't do, and so on, we should be very vigilant, and then always refer to the larger and broader concepts. And I think, over time, eventually that will sink in. But that sadly, takes years, and it will still take years. So we should keep it up.
Yeah, I personally, I think there's going to be some events that take place that just like kind of like the meme of not your keys, not your Bitcoin, and then as exchanges get hacked, people realize, wait a minute, I need to hold on to my keys, or what we saw in Cyprus when there was the government was basically garnishing funds from people's savings accounts, and then there was a realization, oh wait, you can't do that with Bitcoin. I kind of see maybe though, I don't know what the event or events will be, but I think we'll start to see things where in Bitcoin where people will be like, wait a minute, that seems like a flaw. The fact that it's not fungible, that coins can be blacklisted, things can be traced. I don't know what those events will be, but I think that maybe that might be what kind of helps push people towards realizing the importance of something like Monero.
Yes, absolutely. I think you typically you change your opinion either because you are taught something or because your experience teach you a lesson. And until people are facing these type of issues themselves, or that they read about it and they learn about it in a way that is convincing and clear enough, they won't change their minds. But I'm afraid that these events that occur, more and more often, and they are not the type of overnight big event that would suddenly convince everyone. Sadly, I think it's just a continuous process.
So then, how about the other big question, the scaling? What's your take on the scaling? I mean, that's always the other large criticism of Monero. Monero can't scale. What's your reaction to that?
Well, that's bullshit. Just use Monero today, and I mean the answer is there. So I find that very I don't know. It just sounds very stupid to claim that something cannot happen and it's just happening. And I mean, then define scaling. But at least nowadays it works perfectly. I think it's just that it works differently from Bitcoin. So a lot of people are used, for instance, to concept of UTXO set. So the set of unspent transaction outputs that you can keep track of over time. And in Bitcoin, it doesn't necessarily grow on forever, even if it tends to do so, but not like Monero. And in Monero, because for privacy reason, you never know if an output is actually spent or not. You can't trim that set. And that's fundamentally different from how Bitcoin is working. But I don't know, that doesn't mean that you should take a shortcut and define scalability as we should be able to trim the UTXO set. I don't know who decided that it was, the how you would actually define the term scalable or not, because Monero is working perfectly. I think, in my opinion, it's working better nowadays on nowadays hardware than it was a few years back. Mostly because of all the improvements, but also because the progress with the hardware and the cost to get hard drives and so on is just going down. I'm pretty sure if you measure the cost to run a Monero node on standard hardware, it would go down, and we should plot that. That would be interesting. So yeah, I'm not really. No, I have absolutely zero fear about the scalability of Monero. I also believe that these systems are also not purely technical, but also economic. And if it becomes a bit more expensive to run the Monero node, then the transaction fees, I believe, will go up. That's how it should work. And if the cost is so low right now, it's because, in effect, the cost of running the node is very, very low.
And do you see things like second layer solutions, like Lightning Network, playing a role in Monero as they intend on doing in Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think I am. I'm excited about that, but certainly not as much as a lot of people seem to be at the moment with Bitcoin. I don't think the Lightning Network is the panacea that is often presented. I think it's a good alternative to layer one on-chain transaction. So I think we would only have advantages to have something like that in Monero. But I also very much praise the dynamic block size, for instance. Also, just to accommodate the actual Lightning Network, if nothing else, because if you simply open and close channels, you still need a lot of on-chain transactions, and that's what people seem to forget even for Bitcoin. In the original Lightning Network paper, it's explained that you would need about 130 megabyte blocks in order to serve just a small size of the population with the Lightning Network. So I don't remember the specific numbers, but it's something. It's ludicrous. It's like if you want to onboard the population of US to the Lightning Network, and if they were doing just like one channel per year, you would need like 2 or 3 centuries. I don't remember the numbers, but it's ridiculous. Simply in order to open and close their channel. Then after that, they can use Lightning, which obviously is not workable. So It's good. It's a nice alternative. It's very interesting technological system, but it's not, it's not the end goal by itself. Absolutely not.
So you built xmr.to. You have Minko, which we'll talk about. Are you thinking of other? Do you have other projects in mind for Monero? Things that you think the ecosystem needs?
Yes, but nothing that is really advanced enough that I can go into details. Not that I want to hide stuff, but simply because it's also still too undefined. But I'm quite interested to work with multisigs. I think multisig in general is, if you want to move an ecosystem or an industry towards something that's a bit more mature, is very, very important. And right now in Monero, we have the multisig technology, but very, very little, if no, actual service relying on it or making use of it or leveraging what you can do with it. I think there's a lot to do in that direction, but nothing very, very concrete at the moment.
Obviously, Monero is evolving all the time, like you said. Even with these multi-sig things that we're working on, not quite there yet. But has Monero, it's obviously work in progress, but have we achieved digital cash? Are we digital cash today?
Yeah. So I always hate labels, so sorry, but I need to define digital cash first. What we are trying to make a metaphor of Monero being equivalent to digital cash. And what is digital cash right now? It would be something digital that would work as cash. And cash is fungible in that it is enforced by governments to be fungible. So that means if I give you $10 and you give me back $10 next week, it doesn't need to be the actual same note. And I can't refuse if it's a different one. I'm forced by law to accept it. And that's why the law is enforcing the fungibility of it. So I can't say I don't like the serial number on it. I am legally obliged to take it. So that's what we as user of cash get to know. It's a fungible system, not because you can distinguish the actual notes and coins from one another, but because we are forced to live in a system where it is fungible and it's imposed on us. Now, if you move to the digital realm, you need at least a decentralized one. There is nobody that can enforce that anymore. So you have to rely purely on technology to achieve the same thing. And I think you never achieve, probably that's a bold statement, but probably you never achieve perfect fungibility. I think you can try to achieve something that makes it really reasonably close to what we've been accustomed to with original cash. And I think Monero is for sure the best contender to do that. But we should not also just say, yes, we are digital cash because we have perfect fungibility, because then we would forget that chain analytics company can also try to analyze stuff on Monero. We would forget that ring size of 11 is not the panacea. We would forget that you still need to churn. You need to churn properly. You need to churn enough. So we are absolutely not using a system that I would call, it's digital cash, because that would mean it's perfectly fulfilling the principles in order to be digital cash. And I think it's going a very long way. It's probably the best we know of today. But there is still a lot of work to do, and in some extent, it's an arms race. So we also need to learn about the different methods that can be used to endanger the fungibility of Monero in order to then improve it. And I don't see that ending anytime soon. So yes, it's close to digital cash. But if we don't do anything, it might not be in 20 years. So we gotta keep working on that.
So it's a constant battle, but we're in the lead, especially compared to things like Bitcoin, right? I mean, is Bitcoin digital cash? Do you think Bitcoin is,
Oh
using
no,
the same definition?
no, absolutely not. There is no attempt to obtain any sort of fungibility. And then I think you have the disaster of trying to layer on top of transparent blockchain mechanisms that would improve your personal privacy, like the recent Wasabi wallet. I think does help with the privacy of its users, but then they wrongly conclude that it provides fungibility, and it does not. I think it's quite the opposite. If you use privacy enhancing mechanism and an observer could spot that you actually use that, if you don't have if you don't have fungibility, then it actually makes you suspicious, or it makes you a target, because it's clear that you use that privacy enhancing mechanism, and people might ask you, yeah, why did you do so? So it's not providing fungibility. I think there's a big discrepancy between what it does and how it's being presented. So in general, I don't see anything else that come close to Monero in terms of being digital cash as we just discussed and defined it, simply because you need privacy by default.
That was so recently. I tweeted and you had responded. I think I tweeted something like, why is Monero labeling itself as a privacy coin?
Yeah.
And then I think you said where Monero's not labeling itself. Essentially, maybe others are labeling it as that. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
is there anything we could do as a community? I mean, we seem to be feeding into this a little bit because there is this, this privacy coin meme, right? So there's coins, and there's this. Some of them are called privacy coins, and Monero is one of them, which I think is kind of not the correct way of looking at it for all the things we're talking about, right? I think it should be about which thing is acting like digital cash, and whether that's Bitcoin or Monero. Monero's seemingly doing that better right now. So should we try to move away from this branding as being a privacy coin, and towards, hey, we're digital cash? Yeah, one of the features is the fact that we're private by default. But why? Why are we labeled? Why are others labeling us as privacy coins? I mean, it's kind of silly. It's like calling cash privacy money. We don't call it privacy money. It's money.
Yes.
We're trying to be digital money. So what's going on there? Is that a problem? Is that something the Monero community should kind of be working toward rebranding, or trying to steer the conversation there? Or do we just embrace the fact that we're being called a privacy coin, and go with it?
So I think what happened is where we are today. It comes from the historical way of how it happened. And what happened is that a decentralized system such as Bitcoin was introduced without any privacy consideration, and that's our curse nowadays. And I think if you consider what we were used to before Bitcoin, like just 10 years ago, if you were using cash, or even the financial system by doing interbank transfers, receiving your salary and then sending money to your friends, or businesses and so on, we had fairly good privacy. Of course, law enforcement could step in and say, well, what are you doing with your bank account? But with respect to one another, with your neighbors, with your friends, with your employer, there was fairly good, if not perfect, privacy, because we couldn't see what was going on each other bank account, and then we could also use cash and so on. So that was the baseline that we knew before Bitcoin. Then Bitcoin arrived, and that was a huge step backward because it's so transparent. And I think the issue is that it it simply because it was the first one, it became the norm. And nowadays it's considered as the referential, and people forget that that referential is itself really a huge step backward with respect to what we knew before. So when then there is yet another step, Monero, that is a big improvement over Bitcoin in terms of providing privacy and fungibility. In my view, we're just getting back to what we knew before, except that we now have that in a way that is digital and censorship resistant and decentralized. But it's really trying to get back to the basics in terms of what we've been accustomed to use before. And that something in between, which was Bitcoin, is just it's just very crap. But the problem is that it's considered the norm nowadays. So Monero itself, instead of being seen as getting back to what is just like fairly normal for everyone, is seen as going like super private, or that the goal of Monero is to go very private, and therefore there might be suspicious motives behind it and so on. And I think it's just that we have the wrong referential. Bitcoin is the wrong referential. Bitcoin was just a step backward. So I think it's very important that we fight this narrative because it's constraining us. It's a very narrow view. We are not trying to be something private over Bitcoin. We are trying to offer something that is fairly fundamental and that is fairly well accepted if you talk about the legacy world and not the crypto space, which is just a currency that respects the privacy of its users and that offers fungibility, so you don't have to worry about the history of everything that you're accepting. So I think it's very, very important that we don't fall for that narrative, because it would be playing exactly, as first every opponent of Monero is trying to depict the project, and also everyone that doesn't necessarily think bad of it, but is not really grasping the fundamental objectives that we are trying to achieve. So I think it's a very necessary first step of education is to break that narrative and just say, either like you, that is digital cash, or I tend to say it's simply a working currency. It's a working, functional, decentralized currency, period. Bitcoin is not. So, and if you try to label that evolution from something that is not to something that is a working currency, a privacy coin, yes, of course it's reducing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big motivating factor to why I started this show, just because I wanted to help. I'm a big believer in privacy, especially in the digital realm. But yeah, I think, for all the reasons, all the things you're saying, Monero needs to focus on the fact that it's trying, like you said, trying to be a currency, just like Bitcoin is, and it's doing it in a way that's living up to the true ideals of what our currency is. And that's what I kind of find hypocritical with a lot of these Bitcoin maximalists who are, preaching crypto anarchist ideals, and how Bitcoin is this tool that was invented for those reasons, and that's why Bitcoin is so great. And it's not just about becoming rich; it's changing the world. It's this new unconfiscatable, censorship-resistant money. But at the same time, just glossing over the fact that it completely lacks fungibility. And I just that's what motivated me to get onto YouTube, to just kind of fight that narrative, because I just don't. It's hard to swallow when you see these guys out there talking about how this technology was invented for these reasons. Meanwhile, Bitcoin fundamentally lacks that attribute. I mean, that's.
I think we see from the people you describe, so all the like extreme Bitcoin maximalists, or those that make blank statements that are obviously wrong. I think we see some extreme techno optimism that So what I mean is that, you know, you become so passionate about a certain technology that you forget the initial social challenges that you were trying to solve. And you also blind yourself to the new problems that you create by using that technology. And that extreme techno optimism of the Bitcoin maximalists, you can see that in how they are promoting usage of Bitcoin under oppressive regimes. Thinking of China, for instance, and I think it's outright dangerous to advise you know, opponents in China to use such a system, because it's just shooting themselves in the foot. You can also see that in how the narrative is always that Bitcoin is not quite there yet in terms of privacy, but wait for X or Y. It's going to help a lot, and I've seen that since years. So yeah, I think that's a big problem. I don't really know if how much of that is impossible to avoid simply by the project becoming larger and larger. So in a way, you know, the Bitcoin ecosystem becomes more and more similar to what people were criticizing of the financial system before, for instance, in that we see the same type of conservatism. So I don't know how much is simply due to the scale of it and how much is due to the fact that we are dealing with projects that are trying to be money, and there is a lot of money at stake. And because of the general boom of crypto, people make a lot of money. And I think it's just messing with the incentives and with the discussions that would otherwise probably be a bit more rational and level-headed.
Do you think it's almost a little irresponsible for Bitcoin to be branding itself as this, you know, secure, uncensorable, censorship-resistant money, when in fact it's, you know, completely transparent and can usher in, you know, I don't want to sound too extreme, but I mean, there's kind of like dystopia, you know, potential here, right? I mean, we have everybody porting over to this new money that could potentially be, you know, perfectly traced, right? So it's not only do we know who your friends are on Facebook, but now we know every transaction you make. It's kind of the equivalent of knowing what people think and care about to the max, right? If you know what they're spending their money on. So is it slightly, because it's sold as the opposite of that, right? As being this great savior to these centralized systems, but due to its transparent nature, do you see it there being kind of a potential dystopia scenario? Is it irresponsible to pitch Monero and sell? I mean, pitch Bitcoin and sell Bitcoin as this
yeah, I think it is
great evolution and decentralization.
It is very irresponsible. I think we don't see much, at least in democratic societies, we don't see much yet of the downside of using a system such as Bitcoin if it was really adopted, simply because there is not enough adoption yet. So a lot of people in their daily life actually don't interact that much with other Bitcoin users. It's just online for specific activities, and maybe they show up at a meetup and they buy something at the bar or at the restaurant. But you don't get this collapse of your privacy if there is not enough Bitcoin users around you. And I think as adoption is increasing, and you start to have your neighbor using Bitcoin, and you start to have your dentist using Bitcoin, and your employers using Bitcoin, and everyone starting to know everything about each other, and what donation you make to I don't know, support the animal cause, or the fact that you go to a steakhouse, and these guys would then fight and so on. So I think we don't see much of the drawback of Bitcoin, simply because it's too early in terms of adoption. But it's also very easy to imagine what it would be like if there was more adoption. And I fully agree with you that it's irresponsible. And I think a lot of people are just not making the effort to just figure out, okay, what would society be like if everyone was using Bitcoin? And it would be a dystopian nightmare. So why are we still pushing it? Because we don't see the drawbacks yet, but they're also very easy to picture and very easy to imagine. Look, that that makes sense. We're going right there. That's not a good thing. So I think there's a lot of intellectual laziness there. There's a lot of vested interests too. I think the worst kind is not people that say Bitcoin is not private enough, but we are getting there. It's people that say Bitcoin is just the right thing. It's just the right trade-off, because we also need transparency. And I think these people either uh, they work and they have self-interest in chain analytics companies because that's their bread and butter, or they are just outright dangerous, and we should really fight that. Like seriously, these people are pushing onto the world something that is extremely dangerous to free societies.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a, I think it's cognitive dissonance and just also intentional. People are also aware of it and just carrying the narrative because, like you said, they're highly invested and it hurts their bottom line to argue otherwise. So I think it's a little of both, kind of denial of the truth and awareness of the truth, but avoiding it because they own a lot of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about the gambling site a little bit?
Sure.
I think it came on the scene a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Like we said, it's definitely being used because we're seeing some increased volume. What's next with it? How's it going? Is it living up to what you thought it would be?
Well, I didn't really have specific expectations. So we launched it on the Monero anniversary day, the 5-year Monero birthday. So that was 18th of April. So it will be a month fairly soon. And we decided that all the profits of the first month will be donated to the Monero General Fund that is then administered by the core team. So I will make a post probably on the 18th or 19th, and then give numbers and tell everyone, okay, guys, this is the profit and this is the transaction ID of the donation. So you will know more at that time. Right now, I can't really give any specific numbers. I didn't expect that much success in terms of user feedback, community feedback, and number of transactions. That is beyond expectations. Yeah.
Is there? Do you see it evolving any further beyond what it is?
Yes. So this is a beta version. We wanted also to gauge interest. So we will see where it goes. In theory, we could extend it. We could add more games. We could make it a platform that people enjoy using. There is a chat, so you can already go there, and there is this trivia bot that regularly ask in the chat Monero related questions. So I also see it as a way to educate people. So the more they hang out there and actually get to learn how to use a remote node, run a full node, all the intricacies of Monero and so on, I think it's good. So nothing really specific, but yeah, we'll surely try to make people happy with it. So we'll see what the suggestions are.
Very cool. So I know we talked about it offline. Thanks for sponsoring the Monero New York City party that's happening during Consensus and the Magical Crypto Conference, the Speakeasy party. Would have loved to have you there, but I guess you're off on your own adventures.
Yeah, I'm sad to miss that one, I must say. I will be in US for the Monero Conferenco in Denver in June. But this time that was not feasible for me to make the round trip. So yeah, I'm jealous though for the party.
For those watching, Binary Fate is actually a real person. I met him in person in New York a few months ago. So I know he appears to be an unbelievable superhero that is hard to believe actually exists, but he is a real person. And he's working his ass off for Monero, inventing amazing tools for us to use. And I'm glad to have you as part of the community, or I'm glad to be part of this community that you basically started. You're doing great work, man. Keep it up.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for always being so genuine with the things you say. This was awesome, and I hope to see you again in person. And obviously, thanks again for the sponsorship for the party. We really appreciate it.
Hope you'll have fun, and yeah, keep it up with the show. That's a great job. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Yeah, we have Bitfoldle. He's gonna jump on real quick because he also sponsored the Monero party. So we just wanted to have him on real quick to explain his product. All right. Thank you, Jeremy.
Hi guys, how's it going?
How's it going, man? Jeremy,
Hey,
we'll talk to you later. All right?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Sorry I intruded there earlier.
No problem.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. Better late than never, I guess. Yeah, I'm calling from Bitfoldle. I'm one of the founders with my brother Brian, and we create a stainless steel hardware wallet recovery seed backup device. Protects your recovery seeds from fire and flood, acts of God, that kind of thing. Maybe even EMP blast if we're unlucky. Yeah, and you can check us out at Bitfoldle.com. We're really excited about the Monero party and happy to sponsor.
Yeah, thanks. It's gonna be cool. We're gonna give away, I think, like 10 of them. You guys sent us those packages. How long you guys been around? How long has Bitfoldle been around?
Bitfoldle's been around for I think it was a year in January, so I guess about a year and a half almost, something like that, or maybe it's February, somewhere along in there, a little over a year anyway. So yeah, we're doing that, and then we're also running Unhashed podcast as well with Ruben Thompson over at the Soul Bitcoin meetup, and then Mario Gibney, who works over at Blockstream. So that's the other thing we're doing these days.
And how exactly does it work? I haven't tried one out yet. What is the?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, it's just made of 316 stainless. It's a little square piece of metal. I wish I had one on me. I don't have one here. Like I said, I'm in my car. I'm mobile right now. But yeah, it's just a stainless steel piece of metal, and then it comes with a bunch of tiles that have different letters on them, letters and numbers, and then you can recreate your recovery seed or your private key if you want, and you just slide them in. So that way you can back it up in steel, but you don't have to tell us your recovery seed and trust us with it like some of the other companies do. Yeah, it's really very simple piece of product. If you want to come by and see it, we'll be at a Magical Crypto Conference. We'll have a booth there, and we'll also be walking around Consensus as patrons, so you guys can come say hello to us. But yeah, if you'll be at MCC or at the Monero party, then come say hi. We'll be there.
All right, cool, man. Yeah, we'll be giving a couple away. It sounds like a cool idea. I gotta check it out.
Yeah.
I've definitely not properly storing my private key on easily destructible paper.
Yeah, you gotta get on that. We had a client lose $1 million of coins in what was that hurricane in Houston that happened about a year and a half ago? I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, he had his coins backed up on paper in a fireproof safe 6 feet above the ground, but it got 8 feet of water and it waterlogged his safe, and He lost everything. That shit happens.
Yeah. Fluffy's boating accident wouldn't have been as horrific with the Bill Fodl.
No, it wouldn't have been. It wouldn't have been. You have to find it, but at least it would be there somewhere.
All right, man. Cool. Yeah. So I look forward to seeing you at the party. Thanks for the sponsorship. We'll be giving those away.
Cool.
It's gonna be awesome. Thank you.
All right. I'll see you there.
All right.
Thanks,
So
guys.
long. Yep,
See
have
ya.
a good one. All right. I'm gonna close it out. Binary, you got anything you want to finish with, or you're good to go?
No, I'm good to go. Enjoy next week. Have fun,
All right.
guys.
All right, man. I'm gonna hit the.
And see you soon. Anyway.
We're gonna kill it. Kill the show.
All
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Bye.